Oh, well, I can see I've made one fella in the chat reasonably happy with the new opener. That's very funny indeed. G'day, folks. How you going? You might be watching us on YouTube tonight. I've just set the whole show up, not thinking about YouTube whatsoever. So, God knows. Look, there are plenty of shows on Tartaria on YouTube. So I don't think we're going to cross any boundaries tonight. There are a couple of things I want to talk about tonight. One in particular. Now, you will have, if you've been watching this show for any length of time at all, you'll be aware of the absolutely amazing woman by the name of Michelle Lee. Michelle has rowed across the Atlantic, and 206 days ago, she set out from Mexico to row across the Pacific with the goal of getting to Sydney. Now, she has run out of her mainstay foods. She's now on, well, in military terms, she's on rations, and she's on military rations, lovely part of it. So there is all that. It's all very dry or dehydrated food that needs to be rehydrated. She has to make her own water, and there has been a couple of minor breakdowns on the boat. How do I know all this? Well, I know this because she called me this afternoon. I've missed 2 calls from her recently. Today finally was around when the phone rang, and we talked for a bit over an hour. We had a great chat. She is in really high spirits, and I took down a few notes here. So you would think after 700 days, sorry, I beg your pardon, you would think after 206 days and a very large cyclone, that your spirits might be waning a little bit. The food that you really love is all gone. You're only left with basically the survival rations that'll get you home, and you got to make your own water by rowing. You'd think that, well, that would tax a lot of people's minds. Michelle is a truly amazing, and I mean absolutely friggin' amazing woman. And while there are, I'm sure, trying times, she is staying motivated by listening to her motivational tapes. She's got all her favorite music. She's got everything. She's got a satellite phone, so she can call anybody in the world pretty much anytime she likes, and get a little bit of a boost there from friends and family. And now she can smell home. She is 700 nautical miles off the east coast of Australia. She is just south, if you like, of or south and east of New Guinea, and sort of north of Noumea. Now, there are some challenges ahead. There has already been one cyclone that she's had to deal with. Now, that was 9 days with Michelle unable to row at all and locked up in the cabin. Now, what is the cabin on her rowboat like? Well, she said, ask the people if they really want to know what it's like to be in my cabin, go and sit underneath your kitchen table for 9 days and see how that goes. If you want to put your legs up against the underneath of the table, you'll find your knees are probably compressed against your chest, just like Michelle's are in that little space, her bedroom. She knows every millimeter of it absolutely inside out by now. And as she said, absolutely loves the maid. Bear in mind, this is I'm pretty confident, the same boat that took her across the Atlantic. Had a few repairs and a few new things put to her. But she is a, well, truly amazing boat and an amazing lady at the helm. So where will she come ashore? Wow, that is the $64,000 question. The plan originally was for her to head for Sydney, but I think given the food situation and given the fact that she's 206 days in, she's still 700 nautical miles away, we could be looking at another 40 days or more of rowing, and that's given good weather. There are 2 low-pressure systems that are threatening to turn into cyclones very close to her in that vicinity at the moment. And if that were to happen, well, that could probably delay things a little bit, or it potentially, I suppose, could speed them up. You get on the right side of those things, the big waves might push you a bit. The problem is with the big waves, her rowboat isn't built for surfing. It's not built for wave surfing, particularly not ocean open wave surfing. So she'd have drogues out and all sorts of stuff, as she has had. for those 9 days while she was under the cyclone in the Pacific recently. Now, I asked her, what have you missed most? And I was expecting, something like, Tim Tams. And I'd already decided I wasn't going to tell her that Tim Tams have bugs in them and insects in them, because that might be just too much to bear when you're 700 nautical miles off the coast and you've been looking forward to one for a while. But what she came out with immediately, she didn't have to go, oh, gee, that's a hard question, or prepare an answer in any way, I think is what I'm trying to say. This came out of Michelle's mouth straight away. The thing I miss the most is the act of service, the act of being able to help someone else, the act of making somebody happy, the act of putting a smile on someone's face, of feeling their touch when they hug you to say thank you. Touch. She misses human touch, a hug, just that contact. And there is a reason for that. She put it very succinctly. What she misses most after paddling 13,800, 900 odd kilometers across the Pacific to date, what she misses most at the moment is oxytocin. That's the love drug that our brain produces when we do something for others. When we do something that makes somebody else feel good, it makes us feel good. When we get a hug, when we give a hug, when we offer a kind word of comfort, when all we can do is offer a shoulder to cry on. You're producing oxytocin. Well, Michelle doesn't have anyone to produce oxytocin for. In fact, while she has grown quite fond of the odd seabird that spends a few minutes to a few hours with her on the boat, the only other thing she really sees is fish. Fish have taken up residence under her boat, and they've been with her for most of the crossing, so much so that now they've had baby fish. Now, the big fish who've had baby fish are quite large, and they've attracted reasonable-sized sharks who have also had babies. Oh, the joy. So what happens under her boat every evening as the sun goes down is a feeding frenzy, particularly with two meter long sharks that come in under the boat and go hard into the fish. And now their babies are doing it too. Now, they're not attacking the boat or the rowboat in any way, but what they are doing is bashing against it. And it's apparently, as I would think too, a terrifying sound as they bash the boat from all sides and underneath. Now, Michelle goes into her cocoon, let's call it, and stays safe. This usually happens as she stopped rowing, it's getting dark. So she's set up for the night. So until those sharks have finished their feeding frenzy, she's there in the dark, bobbing around like a poo in a Pacific-sized pond, and these sharks are bashing her boat. Got bigger balls than I do, just tell you that. I'd have filled that little boat so full of shit by now, I'd have drowned in it. About 13,200 kilometers ago, if I got that far. I mean, seriously, that woman, the power, the strength. She doesn't know anything about what's going on in the world, and we discussed today if there was anything she particularly wanted to know. She doesn't want to know anything, and I understand that. That's pretty good reasoning. It'll only give her half a story at any rate, and it'll only be what mainstream media people tell her, or what I tell her, or people like me tell her. So it could wind up being a very long conversation with a very confusing bunch of stories that she might wind up spending too much time thinking about rather than concentrating on getting home. So we steered clear of all the current news. She has no idea what's happened in the world since she pushed off from Mexico a bit over 7 months ago, 206 days ago. That is absolutely amazing. So All power to her. And if you are thinking, if you're in Queensland and you would like to come and greet Michelle when she makes land, then let me know. Send me an email, carl@vofhq.com. If you live somewhere along the Bruce Highway that heads north to Cairns, because at this point in time, it could be Cairns where she makes landfall. It's unlikely to be further south, but it's possible. But at this time, it'll be Cairns. Now, if you'd like to come and have something of a welcome party and you've got no way of getting there, or you want to make a bit of an adventure of it, we're thinking about putting together a bus trip, a bit of an adventurous bus trip. And I'm sure there are some people who know how to do this. So we would probably leave Brisbane and go to Rockhampton, maybe Airlie Beach on the way up, get to Cairns a day or so before Michelle looks to be arriving, and then be there for her arrival and maybe the next day, and then come back again and stop in Townsville, Mackay and Hervey Bay maybe on the way back, and we might do shows in all of those towns along the way. So yeah, I'll come along on the bus trip. So if you're interested in something like that, I have no idea what it'll cost, but I will go and talk to a bus company who must have, ways and means of figuring this out. They do this kind of thing all the time, whether they have deals with hotels, motels, or caravan parks, places to stay, as long as we can arrive at a reasonable hour, put a show on, get a feed and go to bed, get up and go again the next day. Let's make a bit of fun out of it and be there to welcome Michelle back after this massive effort, human effort in stamina, effort in mental strength. And I've got to say, talking to her today, as bubbly, as friendly, as excitable as ever. She told me a couple of other interesting stories, which I don't think I'll get too deeply into now. But one of them was something that threatened to end her journey. She was way out in the middle of the Pacific and saw in the distance that there was a fishing boat of some kind on the horizon. So she hadn't seen a boat in ever. She's only seen one cargo ship in the crossing. And this fishing boat sort of came over the horizon. So she thought, oh, great, I'll give the radio a bit of a go. So she has a handheld marine radio. So she's identified herself and basically just wanted to make sure that this ship could see her and wasn't going to run over her or do anything silly. Turns out it was a bunch full of Chinese who motored on over to have a bit of a look. And they didn't speak English, no English at all, but they wanted to help. What the hell is this woman doing in a boat in the middle of nowhere? And they were coming over to sort of pull up alongside and help. So she was quite panicked there for a while, trying to make sure that they, heaved to or stayed clear. She made it very clear that she didn't need their help. Very polite. And eventually they got the idea. They did a big circle around her and then disappeared back off on their fishing line. So that's how your ocean voyage can come to a grinding halt, or your trip, because in her case, the laws of what she's doing say that she must do it solo and unassisted. That means she cannot get anything from another person, another craft on the journey. She can get no assistance in any way. Otherwise, the record is over and done with. So just an amazing woman. So if you're interested in coming on a trip to far north Queensland with us, I'll see if we can't arrange a company who knows how to do bus trips, and we'll do shows in those towns that we go up along with, which obviously you'll be able to come to, and then we'll see what we can arrange to go out and meet Michelle and be there when she hits terra firma once again. I'm very excited about it. Can't wait. She just sounds so good. All right. It is Friday night, the Friday free-for-all, and we have been talking it up a bit this week. Tartaria. What is Tartaria? Well, I think I'll just bring Chris on. It's probably the easiest thing that we can do. And hello, Chris. How are you, mate? Lovely to have you back. No, you've muted yourself. No, you're still muting yourself. No, still muting. You're going to have to unmute yourself. Can't hear me either. Nothing's happening. I'll bring Bob up. We'll see if we can figure this out. G'day, Bob.
There we go.
How you going, Cal?
Yeah, I've been well.
Yeah.
Good, mate.
Yeah.
There you go. Chris has finally caught up. He's unmuted himself. How are you, Bob?
Oh, not bad for an old bugger in my condition. You know, I'm getting there very slowly. But looking forward to tonight.
Well, you're what, week 1 now into the new job. So how has all that gone?
Very well. I'm actually sort of losing track of the hours and that sort of thing. I'd start work and I was meant to have my morning coffee at about 5:30 this morning. Well, at about 1:10, I actually got to have my coffee. So, yeah, busy, but time is flying.
Oh, wow.
And enjoying it.
Excellent. So how hard are you finding adapting to learning new things? I was asked this question myself. Oh, you're old. You won't be able to learn these new things. You having any trouble picking anything up?
I had a few challenges updating myself with some of the computer programs, but on the whole, I'm relatively computer savvy. So yeah, that side of it has been fine. It's just sort of trying to instruct a few lawless drivers that think, this guy just pushes a pen, doesn't know what he's talking about. And when they come unstuck because they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes, you sort of let them have it, and they're like, "Holy hell, where did this old fart come from?" And they don't like it. So never mind. Such is life. They'll soon learn. But hey,
those youngins, mate, they've already forgotten more than we ever learned.
Well, that's dead right. And I've got a 1.5 meter plastic ruler down beside my desk, so it'll be around the ears of a few of them before long.
That's the spirit. Get into it, mate. Interesting comment from Denise here. Yes, there are still pirates at sea. She's an extremely brave girl. Thankfully, there aren't too many islands in the Pacific outside of the friendly ones that she had to go past. So most of the pirates, I think, are in the Indian Ocean. And I guess that could be the next challenge for her. God help us. We'll have to see what happens with that one. Chris, so nice to have you back, mate. I know last time you were on, we got you to learn how to mute your microphone eventually. Thankfully, tonight you've learned how to unmute it.
Yes, mate. How's things with you, mate? Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Excellent to see you. So, all right, boys, tonight, Tartaria. Now, I've had a lot of comment on this pretty much the whole time I've been putting shows on. I knew nothing about Tartaria 18 months ago. In fact, I probably only learned how to say it properly. Can't even say properly. I probably only learned how to say it properly 18 months ago. So shortly after, I was getting it wrong when I learned something about it. So who wants to kick us off and tell me when to bring up the slideshow?
All right. Well, I suppose I might as well kick it in the guts.
Graham,
I sort of first started learning a little bit about Tartaria back when I was in the Air Force, flying down to Antarctica, and here you are. You're always told, Antarctica is a block of ice, nothing down there at all, and you're flying around one of the coastlines, and you're seeing stone statues and remnants of buildings and this sort of thing. That's like, well, hang on a minute. If there's statues and everything else in Antarctica, why haven't we been taught this in school? That was the start for me. And then slowly over time, I got out of the Air Force and went into electronics. And then I started learning about how electricity works and that sort of thing. And when you start having high voltages with very high resistance, you and you end up switching it, you end up with a back force or a electrical energy behind it. And the teacher just turned around and said, "Oh, no, that's just a phenomenon. Just forget about it. It doesn't exist." Well, that's actually cold power. And started again. So you start looking into more and more, and the more you look, the more lies you find. And then suddenly, you start looking at electric cars. Now, people today think, "Oh, wow, electric cars, they're the latest and greatest and whatever." What a lot of effing cobblers. How many people here would honestly know that at the turn of the century, 1900, there were over 70 manufacturers of electric vehicles. And the batteries and stuff within them are a hell of a lot more stable than what they are today. They're of a salt type background, and they would get around 180 to 250 mile on a charge back in 1900. But they're all gone. Well, mostly. Now, for some of you might be interested in Jay Leno. I seriously recommend going and having a look at Jay Leno's garage. And he actually will take you through a 1900 electric vehicle. And it's there on YouTube.
Wow.
In black and white.
I've seen it too.
And and this is all. Yeah.
They have any reason to what was the reasons given why it didn't go ahead? Well, we know why. Petrochemical, the petrodollar.
Yeah. Essentially, what really started to come out of the woodwork was, the narrative was they wanted to increase the range, so hence why they went with the petrochemical side of things. But the reliability of the electric vehicle was actually better than petrol. So what they did is they took out electricity out of the majority of places, so people literally couldn't recharge their cars. So by restricting electricity literally to lights and big public transport, people had no choice but to start going over to petrol.
To petrol,
and then away it went from there. They've hooked you in well and truly.
That's right.
Yep,
absolutely,
100%. So it wasn't just, as it turns out, cars that were electric too.
Nope.
They had some pretty amazing designs for trains or tram systems. Now, we've all heard of the L, and if you haven't, maybe you haven't watched enough movies, but the L is a transport system. I think Chicago is probably best known for it. Might be in New York too, in some places. But the L, I think, stood for elevation. And these are, subways come out and run train lines above ground. But these things are hanging from electric-operated motors.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here in Perth, we've got the Midland Tunnel, and if you ever actually go into it, it's got a relatively steep incline into it. Now, back in the day, they stopped using it because they reckon the steam locomotive was actually burning the crews and people in the carriages further behind with the steam because the locomotive couldn't move quick enough. But if you actually walk the tunnel, which you can do, and have an eagle eye and look up, you'll actually see where the electricity cables, the gantry, was hung, and they have placed new bricks every so often. And so that whole tunnel at some point would have been fully electrified. Yet there is not a skerrick of evidence that it really exists today. And it's now just a walking track because they fully deviated the line. And some people think it's haunted, but but
so many things hidden from us, under sand, underwater, in forests. So many things hidden.
Under golf courses is another real big one. Huge swathes of land, but only the elite will ever play or whatever on it. Why? Ask yourself the question why certain golf courses are fully restricted to the average public. It's only those that have really deep pockets that are able to play on there. Why? What is underneath? If you start getting old photos and stuff,
there's one in Melbourne you can only fly into in a helicopter, I think, or at least that's what the really rich do.
Yep, absolutely. And if you start getting some of the old photos and drawings of what Melbourne used to be, you'll probably find a good answer as to what is actually underneath.
Yeah. Well, we know through the stories of the Dums that there are multiple stories underneath Melbourne, like it goes down 280 something odd kilometers. So a lot of this, I imagine, is probably buried down there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, if people actually want to really do their homework, Pensacola in the United States is another real one to have a good look at, where whole streets that were in existence in the 1800s and whatnot, they've had viaducts built over it, and then literally a whole new ground floor placed above it. So you would have been coming in on maybe first, second, third level on your taller buildings, and you think, oh, that's ground level, but underneath you've actually got huge tunnels and everything, all there exactly how it was back in the 1800s, with tram lines, with street lighting, with the original shop fronts, the whole lot. It's all there, but hidden in plain sight.
Why do we think all this was destroyed, dismantled, taken away? Is it entirely because of the petrodollar?
I truly believe there's bigger questions to be asked. If I mean, you look at like mud flooding and stuff around your major towns, where a first or a second story window is sitting literally at ground level. Now, no one in their right mind would build a building with a window and then you're going to put that level with the pavement. It just it's insanity. Now, so okay, what are they hiding? Is it that these floods or earthquakes, whatever, have caused this inrush of dirt? Why? Why has it come about? And you look at around World War One, in the history, what are they fighting in? Mud, huge amounts of mud. And start asking the question, people. There is a hell of a lot more hidden under our feet that we have no idea about. And and you don't actually have to go too
And
far
most of us have never heard
to
of.
actually find it. Yeah, I mean, seriously.
Well, there's stories at the moment.
Go for it, Carl.
The stories at the moment out of the Sahara Desert, where 100-foot sand dunes or 100 deep holes are being excavated in the sand dunes, and they're finding cities.
Yes.
Perfectly preserved cities that are much older, much older than anything we've been led to believe should be existing at that time. And that's 100 feet under a sand dune. These aren't really deep. The problem, I guess, is the Sahara sands. Well, it's a very big area and pretty deep. What else could be hidden under that? What's hidden under our oceans?
Yes. I mean, have a look at some of the old cartographic maps. Now, there's two real questions that I always ask when I start looking at some of these old maps. Now, this includes Australia, the deserts around Arizona, all through Africa, Sahara, the Middle East. Now, take a good look at these maps. They are absolutely littered with cities. Right across the board. Even here in Australia. Right through what we know is literally just desolate land, but yet there were thriving cities. So, okay. So to me, one, where did they go? And two, around that time, history always said to us we had, good explorers and that sort of thing, and explorers with their boats. They would go around the coast. But how can you see something with that sort of accuracy with rivers and all their tributaries, and you're several hundred kilometres from the coast? So wouldn't you start to now think that those maps were drawn from the air?
Yeah.
And
from the air.
Yeah, from the air.
Yeah.
So whether it's
that,
like a Zeppelin type aircraft, there's too many holes that are in history. And like, to me, the Dark Ages is another huge one. That if you really look into like the archaeology and that sort of thing, you have this massive gap for around 1,000 years. How many people have actually honestly thought that 1,000 years could actually be a lie? Are we actually living in 1023, not 2023? Just saying, folks. Prove me wrong. And
and there was a pin drop.
It's what I'm saying. If people really start to have a look at this, I mean, Anatoly Fomenko is probably a real one to, if you really want to get right into the real nitty-gritty of it. Very, very bright Russian mathematician. Now, he also right into astronomy, and he looked at the alignment of the star systems and found there's something very wrong. And if you actually follow his work, you'll actually find that, that what we know today is actually about 1,000 years off. And, he shows in his work, that we are literally only around, 1,000 odd years old. And nowhere near 2,000. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the more you see of it, the more evidence you see of it, the more easy it is to comprehend what you're saying and sort of think, well, okay, that's not as weird as it sounds. Because, yeah, there is seriously a lot of evidence, and we'll show some more of that in a minute. I suppose we should get onto the Tesla side of things.
Yeah.
Are you going to join in on this one, Chris, from the Tesla perspective?
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Very good.
Can't wait.
All right. Well, let's tick off and see what the first one says. All right. That's a little coil.
Yes. Little cool.
So, folks, if you're unaware of what that is a Tesla generator, isn't it? A coil generator.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes, a mini Tesla generator.
So
which gives off energy.
It gives off energy and travels through the ether.
That's right.
So some people said to me the other day that ether isn't a real thing, Chris. That that's just a made-up thing. What do you say to people who think ether is just a made-up thing?
Tell them to do a little bit more research and then come back and say otherwise, please, because it's worthwhile looking into. Absolutely.
So the ether is the field that allows energy to be transferred in thin air, and it exists. Well, I don't know if it's theoretical or substantial. I'm pretty confident it's substantialized and has been scientifically proven to exist. But Tesla knew about this back in the 1800s and was able to transmit energy through it and light towns with a big, something like that, really, sitting in the middle of it.
Absolutely.
So these sorts of buildings, guys, are found all over the world today.
That's it. They're everywhere. Absolutely. All in plain sight for everyone to see. It's just a matter of looking around and seeing your environment around you, and then you'll see that.
Chris, you're cutting in and out, buddy.
In our very existence today, these buildings, some of them call them government buildings.
Yeah.
Am I? I'm really close to the mic too.
Yeah,
I'm really close to the mic. I've got the actual screen right together. Wow.
No, you're better this time. I think it was the internet, not so much you. So, Chris, we've seen these sorts of towers in a number of countries, and this sort of cathedral we've seen particularly in Europe, but there's quite a few cathedrals here in Australia too. The church have adopted these as their own. Is that what we're trying to say here?
Pretty much, yes. That's correct. Yep. Everywhere. They've adopted these buildings in their own name and use them for their own nefarious purposes.
Now, the interesting thing for me is that this goes into every culture. It's not just Western religions. You'll find these sorts of buildings, maybe without the cross on them, but these sorts of buildings scattered all the way through Cambodia, through Thailand, and not just in populated areas. You'll find that these numbered in their hundreds through the jungles that have been overrun and are now just covered in green. You'll also find a great number of pyramids. I know when I say pyramid, everybody's going to be thinking of Giza or Egyptian pyramids, but not all pyramids are brought to that point, and particularly Asian pyramids do tend to have plateaus on them. You might remember the Mayans and the Incas have built similar pyramids. And they've been positioned in such a way now that we've seen with some new exposures, I guess, things that have been found in the jungles, particularly in Asia, that there is very specific patterns laid out for and around these types of buildings that it's surmised help generate or focus the power into certain areas. Do you guys know anything about that?
Yeah, it's called cymatics. And yeah, you go and look at things like some of the what they call the rose windows in your cathedrals. If you actually went and made a cross section of a magnetron, so what is in your microwave and cooks food, these rose windows, if you actually took the glass out, they would actually start to resonate at specific frequencies. So they're actually enhancing the energy that is going through the walls or into that catchment of the cathedral. And if you also take a real note as well with where the cathedrals are and a lot of the other places of worship, there's always a major water source either underneath or very close by, because that's how they used to transmit the energy. You energize the water, and you can then carry that energy wherever you want. Why else do you think they had canal systems, especially all through Europe? Because they could send energy through the canal system. Right. Here under Australia, you've got huge networks deep underground with all your aquifers and that sort of stuff. That's how you get your energy, radiating through the land.
Yep. Anybody want to tackle Sandy's question? If we've got all these underground cities that goes on forever and ever beneath us, is the Earth flat or round?
It's definitely spherical.
Good question.
Just not as flat.
I'll say
Chris.
this. Where you go, Chris?
Sorry?
I said, where you go?
I was going to say, it's definitely spherical.
I mean...
Yeah, it's definitely spherical. It's not flat, that's for sure.
Well, put it this way. I've flown up at height before, and I'd say what we see out of an aircraft, it looks flat, but I'm unconvinced either way. I still reckon either we're on a far, far bigger plane or planet than what we physically know. Several reasons for it. Possibly, bordering on the realms of other beings, but I am still to be convinced that we're not on around. That it's not completely flat. I still reckon that we are on a planet, but the planet is far, far, far bigger than what anyone truly realizes, and we are actually under a dome. Because of it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the firmament, as they refer to it.
Yeah, I might as well come out with it. I have a theory that what we know as the Earth was the subject of a energy weapon, which absolutely vaporized cities, created our deserts. If you've actually got a sharpish eye, you can actually see remnants of buildings that literally have melted and would look like a natural rock formation over the years. But take a step back and really look, and just start asking yourself, some real questions. It would explain a hell of a lot. And then, was the firmament placed above us to contain so-called damage or energy from those who are outside? Just something to think about, folks. And I'm still working on that theory, but some of the evidence that I'm have been uncovering, especially in and around the Middle East. I'm starting to lean more and more that there is technology that has been used upon this world as we know it that is far, far beyond anything that we know.
Absolutely.
Pretty cool stuff.
I agree.
I can't wait until we find out the truth, one way or the other. I have been saying that it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, nothing's going to change when it comes to distance and time and travel. But I read something today where the author took exactly the opposing position. I've also said that while it's no big deal, the question for me would be why they have lied about it. Why it was so important that we believed the world was round. And that then might trigger a lot more questions that I'm not just so happy to walk away from. In fact, it does quite a lot. The end result for me really doesn't impact. I don't get to travel any faster from place A to place B because of this knowledge. What I do gain from this knowledge is a deep distrust of the educational system, the governmental system, and in fact, our entire history. And that should make people angry. It shouldn't just be me that feels that way. We should all feel that way. Don't get distracted by the fact that it's flat or round. When we figure it out one way or the other, be distracted as to why they felt they had to lie about it, if that was the case. That's just my thoughts on it. I don't see it's a big issue. This looks like a jet engine, but it's not.
Absolutely.
So that was one of your cue to tell me what the hell it is. Righto. Well, come on then. Away with it.
From what I understand, that is a giant sun lamp. A giant sun lamp. A giant sun. A perpetuating sun that they created for them to use that could be launched into orbit. Very very curious sort of technology to be floating around. Yep. Absolutely. So
I've got it blown up here on another screen.
Yeah, go for it, Carl. Go for it.
I mean, that thing is significant in size.
And that could also only be one part.
You're right. They're not blades.
That also could only be one part of an overall
number of parts.
Yeah. So
those edges certainly do look like they fit into other edges.
That's right. So
very, very interesting. Well, that does add to the argument, or the theory,
indeed,
conspiracy, that there is no sun, there is no moon. The moon is an observation platform, and the sun is something that apparently looks like that, or a number of those floating around together somewhere that isn't space, but under the firmament, or maybe outside the firmament. Well, it's all getting a bit confusing. Move on. Chris, what is this? This is like the World's Fair at some stage, back, I suggest, in the 1800s.
World's Fair. Yes, late 1800s. I think it was the 1890s this fair was in Paris. And as you can see, you got all sorts of technology, but also including hot air balloons under this one giant building that, I mean, the architecture of this building alone, I mean, the feats of how they've actually created this is beyond the scope of what we're creating today. I mean, this is clearly a Tartarian building that they've been using themselves and utilized for this fair. But some of the technology that's in these fairs is nothing that we can do today. You know, it's absolutely crazy. When I looked into some of this stuff and just saw the photos, I mean, or where did it all go? Who was in charge of confiscation? Where did this all get taken? To some of these things. I mean, that sun
Well, if you're
lamp
flying
that we saw.
around in a lot of those balloons, there's every chance you wound up in the English Channel at some stage or the North Sea. But and as for the building, are we absolutely? Yes, we are. I was going to say, are we absolutely sure we aren't looking at the underneath of the Eiffel Tower? Is all this not gathered underneath? But that isn't the case. There is evidence in the back left hand where I'm sort of pointing down here. That's the back wall of this building coming down. I was thinking that could be the archway and a leg there. This almost looks drawn.
That's exactly
charcoal.
Because what that actually looks like is the inside of the Crystal Palace. Now, Crystal Palace, there were two of them that were in the UK, as well as one in Paris itself.
Yeah.
Absolutely massive glass structures.
Yeah.
But suddenly, they burned down. And I mean, to me, ask yourself the question: how flammable is steel and glass? How does it just burn down?
Yeah, you're right. That does raise the odd question or two. Well, if it's anything made out of the same steel as the Twin Towers, mate, it just got hot enough and melted.
Well, yeah, that's right. Because jet fuel suddenly burns at 10,000 degrees Celsius, and can suddenly bend metal.
Here's well, I don't know what the hell it is. Is this one machine? Is this a number of machines? It looks like there's lanterns down the bottom here in the bottom of the picture. And probably those there too. This, I don't know, is this an early Coke machine? Sorry, Chris, you drifted off.
One would think so. Hey, it looks like it, eh? It certainly looks like it, eh, to a degree from that time period. But I'm like you, Carl. I have no clue as to what that machine itself is, or if it's several machines together joined as one. I was baffled by the mere picture of it when I first saw it. I mean, but these are the sorts of things that they were clearly making back then, and beyond the scope of what we can create today. So what are they, and what are these things?
Well, I was going to say, I have seen machines similar to what's in your on your lower right there, and they're actually radium heaters, which is why you don't find a lot of fire. Yeah, which is why you don't find a lot of fireplaces in the old buildings, because you use radium in order to make your heat. Very clean, very dry, very efficient.
Wow. I'd never known that. There's a reason we have you on, Bob. Well done. Thank
you. Just some of the old technologies that I came through with my job, it raised my eyebrows when I heard about it. And very, very few of those you'll ever see. Because, the first time I saw one, I asked the question, and it was actually a Russian person that told me the answer. And he was about 70 odd in the shade when he told me the answer. So he would remember it. And bear in mind, that's 30 years ago.
Where would they be hiding these today?
Majority of them would be destroyed because they want you roped into the electric network. The very few that will survive will be tucked away in private collections for or those with essentially lots of money. Or literally just squirreled away. A lot of people simply wouldn't even know what they are. And especially with your government regulations, because radium is slightly radioactive, they'll turn around, oh, no, that's dangerous for you. Out the door, see you later, gone. And, you wouldn't know the difference. Because, I've
wow.
got some of the stuff that I've come across, when I was working in the spooky stuff, I have some really big questions over radiation. And I think there's some real bullshit lies that have been told to actually keep people away.
Oh, yeah.
In around radiation. I do not think it is as dangerous as people are truly telling us.
No. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
I think the same
well,
as well.
you'd know. You've probably been a lot closer to it than most of us.
Yeah. Yes, I've actually held a couple of kilo of uranium in my hand, and with a bare hand, and it's still there, and hasn't grown. Any weird things. I haven't sprouted any extra limbs or anything like that. Glow in the dark. That's one of the reasons why I say.
Gordon pushes a good question here. Could it be possible that they used Tesla energy and they earthed the planet out, which caused that melt and the mud flood that you're talking about? This is good out of the box thinking, Gordon.
It's a good question.
I mean, I wouldn't dismiss that at all.
Because we're all talking about Tesla energy being the savior and, free energy, no power lines, no nothing. Mm-hmm. But if he cooked the earth in the process, that's of the discovery, that's probably not a good thing.
Well, see, your eastward energy, your etheric energy, the harder you draw from it, the colder it gets. So what people have got to understand, there's cold power, which is what we're talking about now. But hot power is what we physically use to run our computers and lights and everything. It's why if you get too close, you'll get burnt. With this sort of stuff, you don't. And I have actually heard of government reports where people have actually dropped items into fish tanks, stuck their hand in and picked them up, and they have not been electrocuted because it's cold. It's what our bodies run on.
That's right.
So there is no damage to us.
Okay.
And the thinner the wires that are used in these devices, the better they work. So, as I said, I've never laid my eyes specifically on this sort of technology, but I do know there are people out there who have nutted it out, and they have been threatened, well and truly.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Go on, Chris.
I was just going to say, indeed, they have been threatened. People like T. Townsend Brown, other famous inventors. Victor Schauberger, he was employed eventually and taken up by the Nazi Party, taken from, I think it was Russia, was it, Bob?
Yes.
Or was he German? I'm not sure.
I believe Russian, but
people like them, these great people, coerced into using their work and actually having it weaponized by those in power. When indeed these sorts of this sort of energy and its source can be used for the greater good, but unfortunately, those in power always try to seek these things out to be used for weaponization, and that's unfortunate because it always seems to be the way with those that are in power.
Absolutely.
So we seem to have a bit of a mix of things here, including the electric car, but we're also looking at what looks to be, well, I suppose, television aerials pointed in the wrong direction on what is depicted to be a city. And I would say a city based in the 1800s. These, I assume, are how we get the power from these great generators up here into your house or into your building. Is that what we're speculating?
Yes.
Yep.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I was going to say from some of the technology and stuff that I know or know of, smaller aerials and that sort of thing were used in and around your dwellings and that sort of thing. Your larger buildings would have larger capturing devices or generators on board.
Yep.
And they would power cities. If you actually look at some of the architecture, the known power buildings were often red and white brick, where a lot of your power usage buildings were generally totally red brick. So the red brick has a high iron content in it, which gives you, in effect, a like a Faraday cage, or a protection, or even like another wire, as it were, because the energy can actually pass through it. Unlike brick and stuff that we know today, it's an insulator because it's mainly silica sand.
Yeah.
So, and again, your buildings are isolating everything.
Yeah.
So,
probably explains why they cost so much to upgrade these days too, because the whole thing has to be insulated from those transmissions.
Absolutely, and probably why red brick is so valuable.
Yep.
Because people knock down these old buildings, but there's still a market for those red bricks.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
absolutely. All right, moving on. Of course, they would never manipulate the weather, would they? I actually looked this patent up. I'd encourage people to go and look this patent up and have a read. It is, well, it's too difficult for me to try and explain. I don't know if any of you guys can put that into layman's terms, but it has a lot to do with heating the atmosphere and bouncing beams off the ionosphere and the craposphere and the shitosphere and the scarosphere and then telling us all that it's climate change. That's essentially what's happening, isn't it?
Exactly.
I can sort of say in my dealings with the spooky side, depending on the type of waves that they push into the ionosphere, some can change your weather. However, some of the more lower frequency waves that are directed and again bounce off the ionosphere and the firmament, I have heard and let's say if you wanted someone to have an earthquake, this device can be used, but they generally require a couple of the HARP units to be aligned and do it.
Yep.
And they have, we are of the understanding they have quite a number of them now spread across the earth. We've got something like 18 of them here in Australia.
Yep.
Correct. I'm, for my Kiwi friends that are out there, I was involved with the Christchurch earthquakes. I remember them very well, especially the first one that rattled us. And I don't know how many people actually looked up in the sky when the first one hit, but I've never ever seen green and purple and orange first thing in the morning, almost like the Northern Lights at 5:30 in the morning, and the sun hadn't even quite come up yet.
Wow.
And then a few hours later, we actually had the earthquake.
Wow.
I would certainly be asking some questions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean the second one, where it was centered, and yeah, I personally feel the first one, where it was centered, was like a warning shot, because it was like right out in the country, where the second one pretty much hit right on the money. Later in the it was just after lunch. In February when that went, and I reckon their aiming wasn't quite right the first time, and
Yeah, right.
which is why I reckon they sized it up, and some of the other major earthquakes around the world, I wouldn't mind asking the question, why, what was really the need for it then.
Absolutely.
And I can almost guarantee you there'll be some dodgy dealing and money corruption somewhere in and around.
Or more.
Because
there's always money somewhere in and around, mate. Always.
I mean, Christchurch, I knew for a fact there were several of the, let's say, larger landowners that were seeking big payouts, and because they were in financial trouble, and suddenly Christchurch happened, and miraculously they got paid out very quickly. But a lot of the residents and that sort of thing that lost houses and whatnot, some of them are still fighting to this day to get payouts. So,
wow,
yeah,
that's atrocious.
just saying, just saying.
Wow,
Oh my gosh.
blown away. All right, moving on. I think this is a wonderful question because until I saw this turn up in the inbox, I had absolutely never heard of a star fort. So, boys, who wants to tell us about star forts?
Where you go, Chris?
Okay. Well, star forts are, from what I've seen in my research and having looked into, they're ancient platforms where they are built, very similarly to like churches on cross-secting intersections of ley lines where energy centers are pretty much centered at or on ley lines. But these primarily are also pointing always to the cardinal points, always directly in alignment with true north. Now, the accuracy of these places are built in such a way that the only way they can be built is from not built, but designed, and where they can actually be laid out as such is to be laid out from looking down from above. Because these things, the accuracy of these is just beyond the scope of the actual building capacity of those trying to build them back at these, or it's not trying, but building them back in these times that we've been taught. This is far beyond. I mean,
So these
look
look like they're still in existence today, or are they mock-ups? Do you know the difference? Where are these star forts?
All over different European countries, I believe. All over different European countries, but I do also believe that there are some still in existence, I think, in Australia as well.
Yes, I've heard that too. I've heard that we're likely to find something like this under the Simpson Desert.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Under the Simpson Desert. I believe so too. Yes.
Staggering. Really staggering. I really hope so.
Yeah, building capacity is just unbelievable. Look at this.
And if you look at the precision of these buildings, and I'm thinking here the precision of these points. This is, Egyptian pyramid precision kind of stuff we're talking about here.
That's right.
So, and something that wasn't built by, tens of thousands of slaves over many, many years. These things have been intricately carved, but I think, like you say, Chris, could these have been carved from the air?
Very
out of
interesting.
mountaintops and whatever.
I've actually thought and theorized about very similar things like that in India, like the Ellora caves, and some of the buildings that are over there. They're so precise in such a way that they could only be done by laser. And if that was the case, I mean, being out of out of one mountaintop, being carved out of one piece of mountain from the top down, and not make one single mistake in any way, shape, or form, and have it be so precise. Every carving, every human, every animal, every facet, because all of them are all built in facing all four corners of the cardinal points, because they always build in four sides. Their buildings are always in four sides, especially representing.
And they come in. Right. Okay. And they come in radically different sizes. They're not always city size. You can have like little village size ones of this too. Yeah.
That's right. So yeah, it's easy to believe that quite possibly these things like Ellora caves or these star forts, to a degree, if they've been built by those that possibly could have been above and used laser to carve them out of existing landmass or mountaintops or whatever, to be so precise, I wouldn't put it past. No, absolutely.
Yeah. George is telling us many science fiction movies are just Easter eggs, telling us they are actually documentaries. Yep, I would agree. Star Wars, Star Trek, and many more. Is John now? All right, this raises a question that I am perplexed, and I'm not really concerned about the answer one way or the other. I'd be a bit excited. Is Jean-Luc Picard really an alien?
Yes.
I think that's your one, Chris.
I'm not sure about Patrick Stewart. I've had a look at his features and his physiology of his cranium, and it's not quite the normal skull or cranium that most of the regular masses have. It's quite elongated for a normal human. Quite elongated. Makes you wonder who his relatives are.
Yes, well, they're French, from what I've heard. So, interesting. There are a number of characters in particularly Star Trek Next Generation that introduce us to a lot of the concepts that we are now talking about. Commander Data, I guess, is probably the most obvious android style thing that we've been presented to get us used to the idea of working with, making friends with, bonding with a machine.
I'll tell you now, the computers that I was mucking around with 30 years ago were mind-blowing back then with what they could do. And bear in mind, that's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
What are we playing around with now?
Yeah.
Well, the touch screens on computers, like on the iPad and all that kind of thing where you touch. I went into a bloke's office in Brisbane, in Park Road in Milton. This would have been late 90s, mid to late 90s. He was heavily involved in motorsport at the time, and I was very keen to become one of Australia's greatest on-track commentators. And I got to sit in his office, and I got to have a look at a computer screen that was sitting off to one side. And as I was walking out, I said, gee, that picture is just so crisp. He said, go and touch the screen. And it was a picture of a lake at sunset. And I touched the screen, and where I touched it, the water rippled out. And it was the first time. I mean, we take that for granted today. If you do that on a touch screen, it'll do that. But this happened in like 1997. This was sitting in a guy's office in Milton. And he said, you won't see that technology for another 15 years. I've just sold it to the military. So the military have had all of this touchscreen technology for years and years and years, particularly brilliant for things like targeting and surveillance and, tracking. All you had to do was touch whatever you wanted on the screen or, pinch your fingers apart to zoom in on it. So they had that 30 years ago. So what the fuck are they hiding from us today? You raise a very good point, Bob. Let's talk briefly about one of the biggest things they've been hiding for us, the X-30, what is it, X-37B, X-39B, the military version of the space shuttle, which is still flying.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot smaller version, but yeah, still flying and still in operational mode, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
what does it do?
Well, according to most sources, it's supposed to be used for restocking the International Space Station, but I suspect that they're using it for quite a lot more than that, especially from outer orbit surveillance, where you can pretty much get a wider range. Would I be correct on that, Bob?
Yep, you would.
Yeah.
You would.
With all this talk about Star Force, wouldn't it also be a crew vehicle?
It could be, possibly, but looking at the size of this thing, I mean, it could have the capacity of carrying a few people in it, in its cargo bay. But generally speaking, I don't think it would be used. I mean, we've had reports of Ronald Reagan back in the 1980s saying that he witnessed he made a statement where he witnessed one day the capacity of a ship that was built that had the capacity of holding 200 astronauts, taking them all into orbit at once. Now, when he made that statement, I looked at the space shuttle as a kid and I was like, that thing doesn't hold 200 people. So what was he talking about? It's obviously a much larger vehicle that's got the capacity of holding 200 soldiers, 200 scientists or specialists, plus crew. So we're talking about something that's like those drop ships that you look in the movie Avatar.
Yeah.
Well,
which apparently we have quite a few of as well, but that's another story.
Yeah, going back to some of your surveillance, that sort of thing.
Yes.
In the late 90s, when I left the Air Force, got into electronics. Now, I had to undergo my croupier's license to go and work in casinos. And this is where real money comes in. And because of my security clearance, I also did the surveillance cameras at New Zealand's two main international airports. So bear in mind, late 90s, you had super high definition cameras that could detect beads of sweat on your brow. Because most guilty people, when they arrive in the airports, that sort of thing, their temperature normally goes up because they're nervous, anxious, because they got a couple of kilo of, cocaine strapped to them or whatever. Or in casinos, they had, both infrared and high definition cameras mounted flush with your ceiling tiles with fiber optic links looking straight down on all the players' tables. And again, they could count the beads of sweat on your head. They could see exactly what your hands were doing. And if you're a cheat, they'd send someone down. Now, why is that? Well, the cabal don't like people ripping them off because they're busy ripping us off. And my God, someone should be game enough to go and cheat them. They want to know about it. So they literally had some of the best technology that was floating somewhere between the military and commercial sort of grade. And very, very few people ever got out into the back room where all these cameras were being mounted. I mean, the thermal cameras, they could see if you had under your clothes and whatnot, if you're wearing devices, if you farted in the room, because you'd actually see the gas come up. They knew more about you than you would ever think.
In Melbourne at Crown Casino, they can walk around above each table and just look down upon it. And then there is a screen up there as well. They can zoom a camera in onto any portion of the table watch whoever they want to watch very closely. It's staggering tech, absolutely staggering tech, and the casinos have the best of it. Like Bob says, it comes from the surveillance industry or the secret agencies. They get to use it for a few years. Then the casinos are given access to it relatively quickly because, of course, they're in league. And then the commercial businesses don't get it then for maybe some of the stuff that I've seen when I was working at the casino on the Gold Coast, some of the stuff I've seen there is probably 10 years ahead of what's available commercially now, at least. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, be very careful doing anything, anywhere inside the casinos in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. They are just wired for sound and vision everywhere. So for your protection.
Of course. And just be very mindful of your windows and any flat, hard surfaces, especially in those sort of places, because they like using a lovely little ultraviolet laser, and they shine it directly on the window pane, and the vibrations of your voice make tiny, tiny little vibrations on the window, and they can pick up that conversation like you're sitting right next door. And they'll be across the room, whatever, and you won't even know it's there.
Perfect example of that, of what Bob's just said. Then you'll see all in the movie Eagle Eye, where they can multi-directionally record you by using that very laser, or some other way of bouncing the sound off a flat surface or anything that's in the room, primarily.
So, boys, we've been talking Tartaria. We haven't even got to the Giants. So now let's get to the Giants. Well, we're heading in that general direction anyway. I've got to say, I'm staggered. I want this fella on the right. I want to say I've seen this clip in an old movie. I don't know if it's real or not, but there are plenty of other things that are fairly real. These are broadswords that were found in Hungary. They are over 2 meters in length. Now, how tall would you need to be to wield a broadsword with a handle like that, and be able to do some damage with it? I mean, you might be able to hold it, but could you swing it before some bloke with a little pig sticker comes in and sticks you in the heart? Probably not. Well, you might be able to if you're about that size. I mean, if you're the size of that bloke, then that's not a hard sword to wield. But such things do really exist. All right, I know. Look, we've gone an hour and a half nearly. So this is the bit I know a lot of people are very keen to talk about. Chris, this is your part of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. What
are we looking at here?
This is one of the giants that were found in what is now known as ancient Iraq, but known as ancient Sumer. Modern day Iraq, sorry, I should say, and ancient Sumer back in the day. Now, I'm not sure as to who this individual is as such, but it has been confirmed by military sources and Dr. Michael Sala, who I've talked to you about, and his whistleblower, who've actually been on mission to these individuals around the planet that are in these stasis chambers, and confirmed that these individuals are in the process of having their. Now, this is a little bit of a hard part for some people to possibly get their head around, but if you think in the sense and framework of Avatar, the movie, how they can project a consciousness using technology into a avatar body, that's what these things actually are, for higher consciousness beings to be able to project their consciousness without technology down into a physical being so that they can actually live, work, and operate amongst us for a certain point in time until they don't need to use it anymore, and actually leave and put the actual body avatar back into stasis again.
Sorry, I'll bring you back to that one. So that makes perfect sense to me if you believe in stasis and the ability to put someone's complete consciousness into an inanimate object. There's a lot we're going to be asked to believe and a lot we're going to be shown true. Clearly,
yes.
The stories that have come out of giants coming out of caves in Iraq and Afghanistan,
Yes.
stories of blokes like this beginning to wake up around the world. Is this a harbinger of doom or a harbinger of positivity?
It's been confirmed that they are actually of the positive, benevolent groups that have actually returned. These gentlemen or these individuals are actually awaiting who we've come to know through what I would say the extraterrestrial and UFO disclosure community around the planet. These are what I would consider to be the master geneticists that were left behind or offered to possibly even stay behind until such time in the future that who we call Ea Enki returns. Now, this is where, unfortunately, again, where the religious factions and the indoctrination systems took the original stories of Samaria, which are much older stories, to base what they call the modern day Christian Bible on, and also the other factions of different religions as well to a degree. But all of them, if you actually look at the different religions, all say the same story, all very similar. And these are if you look at the actual story of Genesis, even though there are what they call 39 books of Enoch that come before Genesis that were removed, if you are to read Genesis properly as actual modern day science, it reads as a modern day genetics experiment.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting that if you were to remove, somebody was explaining this to me the other day, and if you are deeply religious, please do not be offended. Symbology is everything in this game. The first thing, if you are going to be playing this game, you need to understand or need to be able to learn is how to read symbology. And we were having a conversation, a friend of mine and I, about this. And there is so much symbology available to us to see and to interpret that is right in front of our faces every day, from little bits to big bits, really, really big Masonic bits. Symbology is key in all of what we're seeing and saying and doing. So we've been told, we will have signs, symbols of things will come. The Bible, as you've said, is probably one of the greatest symbols of Christianity. But what if you, without wishing to give offense or take offense, what if you were to just replace a few things and change your perception? What if you were to just for 1 second remove all the godlike, miracle type aspects out of the Bible and replace that with an alien technology?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And even if you took it one step further, if you actually do your research, much of the tales that are spoken about in the Bible actually come from the Church of Isaiah, which is actually the original people of this earth, and they've changed the names to Abrahamic names instead of pagan names. Because if you look through the Bible, some areas they are very connected to the earth. There's a lot of astrotheology and stuff in it that comes from the Church of Isaiah. So this is your ancient Celts, pagans, that sort of thing. People know as the Bible today has been twisted, turned, and things created in order to suit the Romans and the church, because they want the fear of God in you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who is this so-called God that they wanted us to be fearful of? That is one of the biggest questions that drove me on my journey. Now, it turns out that from what I understand is that this so-called fearful God that we have to worry about pointing his bony finger and his bearded face at us is who I would consider to be the half-brother of this Ea Enki who has returned. And the reason why the actual indoctrination systems, to a degree, of the church and others around the planet have been actually decreed and written upon is, in fact, to keep us in fear of what they themselves were in fear of. The grand armies of the heavens that shall return at the end of days. Well, I don't think it's the end of our days. I think it's the end of their days, and they were in fear of who was coming, and that is what we call in this part of what I follow in the disclosure community throughout UFOs and the extraterrestrial community and off-world activity is what I call the grand armies of the heavens, being the Galactic Federation, who are working alongside with Space Force, our sixth branch of the military. Hence why it says in the actual book, grand armies, plural, more than one. Armies returning at the end of days, their days, not ours. They wrote it in a way to be in reverse inversion so that we would be kept in fear, and actually put out enough over time, over whatever period of time that we've been in so-called fear under this indoctrination book, that they put out movies constantly, everything on TV that we've seen, always keeping us in fear of what's coming from the sky. I mean, look at Independence Day. That was one of the biggest ones. War of the Worlds by Orson Welles, one of the first false flags that was ever produced on the radio, to see what the actual human illicit response would be. It makes perfect sense.
And it was legendary.
They were gauging back then as to how the human population would actually respond to an outside world attack just by putting a simple radio announcement over the actual radio by Orson Welles.
If you haven't seen the movie, it is available. The old black and white movie where they go through the story and show you the radio play, and it is word for word the radio play. And I think it is the radio play actors in the movie. I've been lucky enough to actually hear a copy of the original broadcast, and it was done so well. Compared to all the other radio at the time, which was, very stoic and, wonderful. This was really acting. And people back in that day only could gather around the radio and listen to actors playing a thing. But the only time you're told that you're listening to a play is at the very beginning, where they introduce it. It's 8:00 and now it's time for the whatever hour. And they start off telling a normal, ordinary story, which people get immediately engrossed in. And then a breaking news item comes in. It was staggering, the reaction in New York State, I want to say, for the most part, where people were going out and packing their houses up or packing stuff up and trying to get out of the state. They were absolutely terrified that the Martians had landed. And it really is a magnificent piece of audio if you have the opportunity to listen to it. Orson Welles wrote it and obviously narrated it. Does a magnificent job of it too. Chris seems to be having all sorts of trouble bouncing back in here. So I think that's the end of our slide presentation anyway. So if we're going to have a failure, it happened at the right end of the show. Bob, I know you're absolutely buggered. You got out of bed at 3:30 in the morning your time, and you've stayed awake for us. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, look, not a problem. So I'm here, and I'll certainly do it again. And here we go. Here comes Chris again.
He gets Smiley back. He's all right. We'll see if he managed to unmute his microphone this time.
Oh, yeah. Mic's intact.
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
There you go. Very good. Well, you've arrived just in time to leave. We've had a great night. Thank you very much for all your efforts and all your knowledge, both of you. It's great that we've got access to you, and thanks for coming on and sharing it with our audience here. And look forward to doing it all again real soon. What hole are we going to go down next time, boys?
I don't know.
I was talking about that with Bob tonight. I was, and I was like, decisions. We got so many files I can look at. We can share.
All right. Well, you let me know, and we'll get it on the radio. Well, on the whatever this is. All right.
On the net, absolutely. Thank you, everyone, and just also a shout out to those in New Zealand doing it really hard.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of people that I know that are doing it very hard, and once I have certain few files and photos, they will be shared to you, Carl, because what mainstream media are saying is absolutely nothing like what is happening there. I've heard through the grapevine there's possibly up to 1,500 missing. Yeah. And it's devastating.
I've heard bodies have been washed out to sea. There is only one access road available into northern parts of the North Island. 4 bridges are down. 5th has got to be destroyed. There is no Wi-Fi. There is no telecommunications, so people aren't able to get real-time stories or pictures or images out. And people are resorting, I heard the other day, to pulling out their old photo processing gear. And if they happen to have an SLR camera that has a bit of film left in it, they've been taking photos and processing that film, and then literally going to rivers and trying to cross them with rowboats or whatever, or putting the messages in a bottle and throwing them, and people downstream on the other side are getting them. But obviously it's a very slow way of getting information out. It doesn't seem to be.
I mean, some of the things that I've heard come back, it is literally another Lismore all again, where the emergency services and those that are supposedly meant to be helping turned up for the photo shoot. Yep, all good. Right, back in the car, gone. And and all I can really say is, where is Jack Cinder? From all this, bullshit through the jabby jab, where it was all be kind. Well, where are you? Where are your politicians for those that are in need? Yeah, nowhere to be seen.
No.
Their day is coming. Let's put it that way.
I want to thank you again, boys, for a bloody great show. Look forward to doing it all again very soon. Stay safe. Have a bloody good weekend. Try and get some sleep, Bob.
I certainly will. I'll go and have a scotch now.
That's the spirit. Well, you'll be asleep shortly then, I have no doubt, if it's a good one. All right. See you soon, buddy.
All right. Catch you later, everyone.
And Chris, thank you, mate. Look forward to catching up with you sometime soon too.
Always a pleasure, mate. Thank you again. Thank you, audience, for being here. It's always a pleasure to be here.
No worries. Cheers, mate. Good on you. Folks, I'm going to just go through a couple of questions that I starred. The curry's just up the road from Townsville. Carl, thank you, Redneck. Yes, well, if there's a good curry, I'm always up for a good curry. I like a curry. Paul, Eastern Currents. Oh, this is for Michelle. Eastern Currents will push her south. Probably Harvey Bay will be as far north as we have to go. Well, I hope that's the case, but she has one of the best weather routers. In fact, the best weather router in the world helping her. And I don't know. I know nothing about currents, but sure, Harvey Bay might be as far as we have to go. If that's the case, not a bad thing. Amazing story. Michelle is an amazing woman. Wish her well. Yes, Eva, thank you very much. She is completely believable. And Scouse Raw. You are such a goose, such a dick. and pretty stupid for bringing my mother into it. So I just wanted to say goodbye. And that'll be the end of Scouse Raw. I don't care what you say about me, but don't bring my mother into it. And don't play that game. Rude little turds. Okay, having a bit of a quick scan just down to see what sort of questions we got. Doesn't seem to be too many. The Mosul sphere. I know nothing about the Mosul sphere at this juncture, unless you're talking about the sphere that seems to be flying around Europe at the moment. In which case, yeah, they're working on it, but I don't know anything about the Mosul sphere right now. George is yelling out fake news. I'm not sure if that was mine or his. Sirens going off, JJ. Yep, they're going off all over the place. Nature doing what it does best. David, yeah, nature does some great things, but occasionally I think she's getting a bit of help, particularly from underneath. There is a lot of technology involved in earthquakes, and they've had it for some time. And both sides now seem to have it. Only one side seems to be using it. Let's hope it's the white side. That's all we can get onto. Yeah, New Zealand, North Island, New Zealand, absolutely terrifying what's going on there at the moment. The people are feeling like they're completely deserted. And I'm, well, hopeful of getting some news out of there too. I've got some friends in the South Island, and they have friends in the North Island. So eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to hook up. But at the moment, there is absolutely no communication, or if there is, it's only for emergency services, I guess. So, yeah. Thank you, Black Sheep. I appreciate your support, my good friend, and I hope you have a great weekend. I trust the fuel is coming down. Maybe diesel is under 2 litres, $2 a litre in Tassie now, because I'm sure if it's a beautiful weekend, mate, you want to get that John Deere out and give it a bit of a go. If you are going to go out and give it a bit of a go, for God's sake, mate, for God's sake, make sure you stay away from the dickheads on the road, hey?